You ever spend your whole life proving yourself, only to realize your biggest critics share your last name? I'm Stella Powell, 38, self-made CEO of Nexus Technologies, and for once, I thought I could just be a sister, not a boss, not a headline, just family. So when I showed up to my brother Adam's wedding, I wasn't expecting drama. I was craving connection, but nothing could have prepared me for the slap in the face that was waiting in the form of a seating chart. They tried to put me in my place, literally. But here's the thing. When you've built an empire from the ground up, you don't sit quietly in the shadows. Not anymore. What happened next turned a wedding into a war zone, and I finally stopped asking for respect. I took it. Let me take you back to where it all began. I'm Stella Powell, founder of Nexus Technologies. But before that, I was just a girl from Westfield, Connecticut, chasing ambition in a family that only celebrated touchdowns. My brother Adam was the golden boy, following our father into sports and later the family business. I was the quiet one, drawn to code and curiosity. While they cheered from the bleachers, my debate wins went unnoticed. That tech stuff's just a phase, my dad said. But I didn't grow out of it. I grew into it. I earned a scholarship to MIT. Adam coasted through college and landed a cushy job at Dad's firm. I poured myself into a Boston startup, lived off ramen, and eventually risked everything to launch Nexus Technologies. No support came from home, just polite doubt. If it doesn't work out, Mom said, there's always a job here. They never asked to see my pitch, never offered to help. I was building an empire, but to them it was still a phase. Then it happened. Nexus secured a breakthrough contract. We scaled fast, hired talent. At the same time, Adam got engaged to Tiffany Bradford, real estate royalty. My parents were thrilled. A perfect match, they said. But when I told them Bradford Enterprises had just signed a $30 million deal with Nexus, their reaction? A shrug. That's nice, dear. Did you RSVP to Adam's party? They had no idea the Bradfords chose my company, not because of Adam, but because of what I built. So when I arrived at the engagement party and saw my name buried on a table in the back, I smiled. That night, I made a quiet vow. They'd never overlook me again. My revenge wouldn't be loud. It would be undeniable, measured in power, recognition, and success too big to ignore. Richard Bradford had a private golf course on his estate. That should have been my first warning. At Adam's engagement party, I met him for the first time. Tall, silver-haired, radiating effortless power. So, you're the mind behind Nexus, he said, shaking my hand. Eleanor tells me your platform could save us millions this year. I was stunned he even knew who I was. Call me Richard, he smiled. Let's have dinner sometime. I want to hear more about your vision. Before I could respond, my mother swooped in, voice shrill and eager. You two have met? She asked, surprised. Just now, I replied. Richard was complimenting our software. Richard paused. Our software? Wait, Powell. You're Adam's sister? His confusion said it all. He never mentioned you ran Nexus Technologies. My mother laughed lightly. Stella's always been our little computer genius. Adam's more into real-world business, like his father. The sting was sharp, but I smiled anyway. Adam hadn't forgotten to mention me. He'd chosen not to. My success didn't fit the golden boy narrative. Still, I hoped the wedding might shift things. I imagined standing beside Marcus, my venture capitalist boyfriend, being recognized for the Nexus Bradford deal. Maybe they'd finally see me. The wedding day arrived dripping in wealth. The Bradford estate rolled across 30 pristine acres overlooking Long Island Sound. As we pulled up in my Tesla, Marcus whistled. You didn't say it was this grand. I hadn't known either. I stepped out, heart steady, ready for my moment. Until I saw the seating chart. I wasn't near the front, not even the middle. I was in the far back, behind college friends, distant cousins, even the caterer's assistant. Not forgotten, deliberately hidden. And in that moment, something inside me hardened. I wasn't the overlooked sister anymore. I was the woman they underestimated, about to show them exactly what a woman like me can do when she's done being dismissed. When I introduced Marcus to my mother, she barely glanced at him before instructing, "Your father's by the bar. Go say hello." Then walked off. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Just wait," I said. At the bar, my father offered a quick, hollow hug. Richard Bradford, in contrast, lit up. "Stella, your software's already saving us millions." The men turned to me, intrigued. Maybe, I thought, they'd finally see me. Then my father chimed in. "Adam made the introduction, always looking out for his sister." A lie. I was about to correct him when Tiffany swooped in, all silk and smiles. "So practical," she said, eyeing my navy dress. "I thought we agreed on pastels." "We didn't," I replied calmly. Her smile stiffened when Marcus said he'd sit with me, not at the family table. The tension thickened. The ceremony was lavish but soulless. Adam played the part but barely looked at his bride. At the reception, I gave my name to the planner. "Table O," she said, uneasy. "I'm the groom's sister," I protested. A manager pulled me aside. There was a mix-up. But the front tables were full of friends, colleagues, even a Pilates instructor. It wasn't a mistake. It was erasure. I'd built Nexus from scratch, sealed a $30 million deal, and still they buried me in the background. Not because they forgot, because I didn't fit the story they crafted for Adam. But I was done waiting to be seen. That night, I made a silent vow. I'll define who I am. They called me the quiet one, the tech girl in Navy. But I'm the woman they'll regret underestimating. And this was just my origin story. The catering manager gave a stiff smile and led us away from the glowing reception. Instead of chandeliers and music, we were guided down a quiet hallway. When she opened the door, we were in the kitchen. A tiny table with 2 chairs sat in the corner, draped in a makeshift cloth. My face flushed. I didn't need an explanation. I knew exactly what this was. She mumbled about last-minute changes, avoiding my eyes. I reminded her, calmly, that my company had just signed a $30 million deal with Bradford Enterprises. She blinked, confused. She wasn't behind this. She was following orders. Then Tiffany appeared, eyes gleaming. I looked at her. "You put me in the kitchen." She shrugged. "Priorities." That word said it all. Adam had seen the seating chart. Tiffany's smug smile confirmed it. Marcus said nothing, but the fury in his silence was enough. I whispered, "I need a moment," and stepped away. In the restroom, the weight finally hit me. Not just this insult, but years of being sidelined. Birthdays ignored, speeches skipped, calls cut short. I was never part of the story, only useful when convenient. Even this wedding, bankrolled by a contract I secured, pushed me out of sight. A gentle knock broke the silence. "It's me," Marcus said. He held out a glass of champagne. "Figured you might need this." And for the first time all night, I exhaled. Not because the hurt was gone, but because the truth was clear. They didn't silence me. They gave me a reason to speak louder. And yet, I came. Even after everything they'd done, I still showed up, clinging to some fragile hope that maybe this time would be different. That maybe success had finally earned me a place, not just at the table, but in their eyes. A small acknowledgement, a sliver of pride, or at the very least, respect. I didn't say any of that out loud. I didn't need to. Marcus understood. His quiet presence beside me said everything. He didn't ask why I hadn't stormed out after the kitchen humiliation. He simply stayed close, as if he knew I was waiting for something, maybe clarity. Then my phone buzzed. Eleanor Wright's name lit up the screen. I stepped aside to take it. Just confirming next week's meeting, she said brightly. Also, the first payment was processed this morning. 30 million. Everything's moving smoothly. And in that moment, something inside me settled. I wasn't some overlooked guest. I wasn't the girl they forgot to celebrate. I was the woman behind the contract that was funding this very reception. The chandeliers, the imported linens, the string quartet, every single one owed something to my work. I straightened my shoulders. Thanks, Eleanor. I'll call you Monday. When I turned, Marcus was watching me. I didn't speak, just gave a nod. He returned it, quiet and certain. No questions, just support. In the restroom mirror, I wiped away the last traces of mascara and humiliation. I no longer wanted to cry. I wanted to be seen, but not by them. I needed to be seen by me. I'd spent my life chasing validation from people who measured worth in touchdowns and charm, and I had built something real while they weren't looking, something lasting. Nexus wasn't just a company. It was proof. Proof I was never the problem. We walked back toward the tent. The music grew louder, the laughter more careless. Inside, the celebration was in full swing. Crystal clinked against glass, servers moved in rhythm, and conversations blurred into background noise. No one noticed us re-enter, which honestly was perfect. Because I didn't come back to be noticed. I came back to reclaim something. I scanned the room until my eyes landed on Richard Bradford at the head table. He was laughing, flanked by executives and politicians, his glass raised in a private toast. That table, that moment was funded by my team, my software, my late nights. I turned to Marcus. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Just leaned slightly closer and whispered, "Let's make sure they understand exactly who they put in the kitchen." I nodded once. This wasn't revenge. At the head table, Richard Bradford laughed with Adam, Tiffany, and a lineup of suited men whose presence made one thing clear. This was less a wedding and more a business summit. Marcus leaned in and whispered, "They're pitching the merger." I recognized the man beside Richard, Thomas Harrington from Coastal Development. Bradford wasn't just celebrating his daughter's wedding. He was using it to close deals. And Adam, of course, was playing along. Perfect. I walked across the tent, each congratulatory smile from a stranger falling flat as I passed. They didn't know I'd been hidden away, so these men could take my seat. But I wasn't here to explain. I was here to remind. Richard saw me first. The shift in his expression from cordial to cautious told me everything. He gestured to the others, mentioning something vague about software strategy. I didn't smile. I simply clarified. The technology they were discussing was mine, developed by Nexus Technologies, the very system this expansion depended on. For the first time, the laughter stopped. Adam tensed beside him. Tiffany's eyes narrowed. No one offered me a chair. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I stated the truth. My company built the platform they were banking on, and they repaid that value by placing me with the kitchen staff. Richard looked stunned. Adam avoided my gaze, and Tiffany attempted to smooth it over, calling it a seating mishap. But it wasn't. It was a message. I reached for my phone, not out of anger, but clarity. With calm fingers, I dialed the number for Gregory, Nexus's lead counsel. Terminate the contract with Bradford Enterprises, effective immediately. That was all I said. The table stiffened. Richard leaned forward, questions rising, but I was already turning away. I'd said what I came to say, with action, not argument. Let them explain to their board why their most valuable software partner walked out of their own wedding reception. I wasn't there for revenge. I was there for closure. Because for the first time, I stopped waiting for a seat at their table and reminded them that I built my own. I ended the call and slipped my phone back into my clutch. Around me, silence had spread like smoke, uneasy, hanging. The tension at the head table was now palpable. I didn't raise my voice or explain myself. I didn't need to. My message was clear. Nexus Technologies does not partner with people who think power justifies disrespect. Richard's face had drained of color. His eyes narrowed in disbelief as the reality settled in. A multi-million-dollar deal had just vanished, and it had nothing to do with tech specs or market shifts. It had everything to do with how they'd treated me when they thought I was just the sister, not the CEO. He turned sharply to Adam, his voice low and clipped. "Did you know?" Adam stumbled through a weak denial. But I knew, and so did Richard, that Eleanor had already told him weeks ago. The lie exposed itself in the silence. Tiffany stood too, her face tight with fury. She muttered something about me ruining the wedding, but the truth was simple. I hadn't ruined anything. They had, long before I ever stepped foot in that tent. As they stormed off, Marcus leaned toward me. That was the cleanest takedown I've ever seen. I allowed myself a smile, not triumphant, but earned. We turned to leave, but we didn't get far. One by one, the men at the head table approached, no longer looking at Adam or Richard, but at me. Business cards emerged from suit jackets like white flags. Thomas Harrington from Coastal Development wanted a meeting. Gerald Winters from Apex Investments had been watching Nexus for months. I accepted each card politely, not out of pride, but principle. This wasn't revenge, it was recalibration. "My assistant will follow up," I said. "But now, I have other plans." We exited to the sound of voices rising behind the tent. The illusion of perfection unraveling. The irony? They had tried to bury me in the background and ended up spotlighting me instead. At the valet, I tipped generously as the young attendant returned my Tesla. He glanced at the car, impressed. "Nice ride," he said. "Thanks," I smiled. "You'd be surprised what you can build when no one believes in you but yourself." Marcus laughed as we pulled away. And for the first time all day, I felt something close to peace. Not because I got even, but because I finally stopped shrinking to fit their table and stood fully in the power of my own. My father's glare shifted to Marcus for the first time, unimpressed. Marcus didn't flinch. Calm, measured, he reminded him, "Your daughter is the CEO of a company Bradford specifically pursued for its excellence. She deserved better than the kitchen." Dad's voice dropped an octave, sharp and clipped. "And who are you to lecture me about my daughter?" I stepped in before Marcus could answer. This wasn't about ego. It was about a lifetime of disrespect. I told him the truth. Basic respect isn't too much to ask, and I'm done begging for it. That word, respect, set him off. Suddenly, it was about Adam, about the contract, about the opportunity Richard Bradford had dangled. And there it was, the real issue. Not my career, not my worth, just Scott's shot at climbing higher, once again on someone else's back. He told me to fix it, call them, say I was emotional. I said no. My mother appeared then, mascara smudged, eyes glassy. She pleaded for peace, for Scott's sake. I looked at her and asked the one question I'd held in my heart for years. "Can you name a single time you were proud of me out loud the way you always brag about Adam?" She couldn't. She didn't even try. Around us, guests had started watching, faces polite but fascinated. I saw Cousin Olivia in the crowd, giving me a small, supportive nod. I took a breath and told them, "This wasn't the place for drama. We should talk later in private." But my father just shook his head. "You've made your choice. You stood against your brother, against this family." "No," I said. "I stood for myself." Before he could respond, Adam stormed out with Richard and Tiffany close behind, his wedding suit rumpled and his composure cracking. He demanded to know what I'd done, how I could jeopardize everything over a table. I told him the truth. My company is worth over $200 million. I employ dozens of people, and I don't sit in kitchens to make others feel more important. Scott begged me to fix it. I stayed calm. It wasn't a mistake, and I won't pretend it was. Tiffany finally snapped. Her voice screeched through the quiet, accusing me of ruining her day over a stupid table. But the damage wasn't mine. They wrote this ending the moment they decided I was disposable, and I had simply refused the role. Tiffany's voice rose in protest until her father's sharp tone cut through the noise. Richard Bradford approached with the control of a man used to owning every room, though his expression was unreadable now. He spoke carefully, suggesting that perhaps there had been a miscommunication. There hadn't. I told him plainly. His daughter knew exactly what she was doing. He glanced at Tiffany, who had the decency to look uneasy, if only for a second. Still, he asked if we could speak privately, citing the contract's significance. I kept my tone level. I'm aware of the consequences. My decision stands. That cracked his composure. He asked if I was truly willing to walk away from $30 million over a seating arrangement. I looked him in the eye. I'm willing to walk away from a partnership where I'm not respected. The money is secondary. For a moment, something flickered in his gaze. Surprise, maybe even respect, before he nodded stiffly. He promised his legal team would follow up. I assured him Nexus would facilitate a smooth transition, no need for his people to suffer because of choices made by his inner circle. Tiffany's frustration boiled over. She accused me of jealousy, of trying to sabotage her perfect day, but Richard didn't indulge her this time. With surprising finality, he told her to go back inside. She turned on her heel, followed by my parents, leaving the driveway eerily quiet. Before walking off, Richard leaned in slightly. For what it's worth, he said lowly, I didn't know about the seating. Had I known, I would have stepped in. I met his eyes. Thank you, but it doesn't change anything. As Marcus and I drove away, the Bradford estate shrank in the rearview mirror. He asked if I was okay. I let out a slow breath, tension unwinding from my shoulders. Better than I have in years. It wasn't just the broken contract or the public stand. It was the release of a weight I hadn't even realized I'd carried. The weight of constantly trying to be seen by people who had no intention of looking. I glanced back one last time. That chapter was closed. Ahead of me, clarity, freedom, and the unshakable confidence that I would never again accept less than I deserved. And this time, I wasn't just building a company. I was building a life. On my own terms. Richard Bradford's voice broke through Tiffany's tantrum like a gavel hitting wood. Calm, commanding. He approached my car, posture controlled, expression unreadable. Miss Powell, he said with practiced diplomacy, I believe there's been a serious miscommunication today. There hadn't. I told him so. Tiffany had made it clear exactly where she believed I belonged, and it wasn't with family or business leaders. He hesitated, then asked to speak as professionals, mentioning the weight of our contract. I kept my answer simple. My decision stands. His composure cracked for just a moment. You're willing to walk away from $30 million over a seating arrangement? No, I answered. I'm walking away from a relationship where I'm not respected. The money was never the point. There was a flicker, something like reluctant admiration, in his eyes. He nodded stiffly, promising his legal team would coordinate the termination. I offered to ensure a smooth transition. We might be parting ways, but I wasn't going to sabotage his company's operations. That's not how I did business. Tiffany, unable to accept the calm unfolding of her ruined narrative, exploded again, accusing me of jealousy, of sabotage, of trying to steal Adam's spotlight. But this time, Richard didn't shield her. His voice was sharp, dismissive. Tiffany, go back inside. We'll speak later. And just like that, she was cut out of the conversation she thought she controlled. As they left, Richard paused beside my window. For what it's worth, had I known, I would have stepped in. Thank you, I said, but it doesn't change anything. I drove off without looking back at Adam, who stood on the driveway, stunned and silent. Marcus sat beside me, watching me breathe again for the first time that day. "You okay?" he asked. I gave a small smile. I feel like I finally stopped carrying something I never should have held. Approval, validation, permission. Monday morning arrived with the fallout. Emails, missed calls. Eleanor Wright had sent 3. Richard had called twice before 8 a.m. I told Sarah, my assistant, to schedule Eleanor at 10. Richard? He could wait until tomorrow. Gregory, my COO, poked his head into my office, raising an eyebrow. "Want to tell me why we just canceled our biggest contract?" I motioned for him to sit. "Because they thought I was just someone's sister." He nodded slowly. "Then you were right to walk away." As we planned next steps, Sarah buzzed in. "Thomas Harrington from Coastal Development is on line 1. He says it's regarding a potential contract." I pressed the speaker. "Mr. Harrington, this is Stella Powell." "Miss Powell," he replied. "After what I saw at the Bradford wedding, I'd like to hear more about Nexus." Turns out, when you stop shrinking for others, the right people find their way to your table. Thomas Harrington's voice came through clearly over speakerphone. He'd been impressed by what he'd seen at the Bradford wedding. Not the event, but me. Coastal Development, he said, had been considering a partnership with Bradford Enterprises, but after witnessing how certain dynamics played out, he was reevaluating the fit. I kept my tone even. At Nexus, we value professionalism and mutual respect. We'd be glad to set up a demo at your convenience. Gregory, seated across from me, raised his brows as the call ended. That was unexpected. It made an impression, I said simply, though the impact ran deeper. The very people who dismissed me had unwittingly given me a platform. Now I intended to use it. By noon, the Bradford contract cancellation had become company knowledge. I didn't share personal details, but the senior team knew something significant had shifted. No one questioned me, they just got to work. My 10 a.m. call with Eleanor Wright was tense but professional. She was upset, but more at the situation than me. Near the end, her voice softened. I didn't know about the seating incident until Richard told me. It was unprofessional. I'm sorry. I appreciate that, I replied, and I value the work your team has done. But some lines, once crossed, don't uncross. Later that afternoon, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I nearly let it go to voicemail until something told me to answer. "Stella Powell speaking." A pause, then, "Stella, it's Diana Powell, your aunt." The name pulled me still. Aunt Diana had vanished from our lives 2 decades ago, her absence wrapped in silence. She said she'd been following my journey from afar. "You always were the smart one. I'm proud of what you did." I barely got out a thank you before she continued, her voice calm but firm. "What you did broke a cycle, the same one that forced me out." She told me about her past, building an interior design firm in the 80s, only to be written out of the family business she helped grow. Everything I'd endured, she had too, but in another decade, with different excuses, different faces, same pattern. We spoke for an hour, filling in decades of silence with clarity, pain, and pride. Her call didn't fix what my family had broken, but it reminded me I wasn't alone. And maybe I never had been. By late afternoon, my phone had turned into a magnet for opportunity. Thomas Harrington wanted a full demonstration. Gerald Winters from Apex wasn't just interested in our software. He was proposing a strategic investment in Nexus. "Your decision at the Bradford wedding showed the kind of leadership we bet on," he said. "Bold, principled, unshakable." As my legal team finalized the termination papers for the Bradford contract, 3 new client discussions had already begun. The irony? I'd been banished to the kitchen, only to walk out with the attention of every major investor in the room. Sometimes, exclusion is the best introduction. Then Adam's text arrived. "Need to talk. Just you and me. Tomorrow, lunch. I stared at the message. After everything, I didn't owe him anything. But part of me was curious what remorse looked like when it wasn't masked by entitlement. That night, Marcus called. I told him everything. The calls, the email from Richard, even the unexpected voice from the past, Aunt Diana. Feels like the world shifted, I said. Or maybe, he replied, you just stopped orbiting their approval. His words lingered longer than I expected. Around midnight, Richard's name popped up in my inbox, a formal meeting request wrapped in careful language. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Whatever happened next would be on my terms. Weeks later, I sat across from Eleanor Wright at Luchos. The same table where Adam once stumbled through half-hearted apologies now hosted something far rarer: honest respect. She sipped her coffee, eyes tired. The transition isn't going well. The new vendor's 3 weeks behind and the features can't match Nexus. Internally, Richard knows he messed up. I listened, not gloating, just absorbing the full weight of what they'd thrown away. I'm sorry for your team, I said. They didn't deserve that chaos. She leaned forward, voice softer. Off the record, they want to fix it, but they know you don't need us. She was right. I didn't. That meeting wasn't about rebuilding a bridge. It was proof that I no longer had to beg to cross one. Once, I would have settled for a seat at their table. Now, I had my own. And this time, everyone was watching where I sat. Mr. Bradford, I appreciate your time, but my decision is final. My voice was steady as I slid the termination papers across the table. His smile faltered. Perhaps we could discuss a new contract. On more favorable terms? He offered, the edges of his confidence fraying. But this was never about terms. I reminded him, calmly, that respect isn't a clause you can negotiate after the fact. Being seated near the kitchen wasn't a mistake, it was a message. One delivered not just by his daughter, but by my own brother, Adam. And I heard it loud and clear. Richard was silent, a long pause stretching between us. Then came something unexpected. I've been there, he said quietly, treated like an afterthought until I built enough to demand respect. I see now, that's what you were doing. His honesty cracked through the corporate pretense. Your brother doesn't deserve you, he added, and Tiffany's behavior completely out of line. After that, communication shifted to Eleanor Wright, now acting as a cautious bridge between us. She brought a proposal, a clean reset, new contract, new leadership contacts, along with a formal written apology for what had happened at the wedding. Tiffany, it turned out, had been quietly removed from all company operations. Eleanor said they were adjusting to married life. I already knew the truth. Adam had confessed it to me over lunch, that it was Tiffany who changed the seating chart, that she couldn't stand my success overshadowing his, that he let it happen because, for years, it was easier to downplay my achievements than admit I'd passed him. It doesn't make it better, I'd told him. No, he said softly, it makes it worse. We weren't suddenly healed, but for once, there was truth between us. Back in the present, I looked at Eleanor. I'll think about it, I said. Nexus had grown. We weren't who we were when we first signed with Bradford. We'll respect your choice either way, she said, before leaving with a handshake that, for once, felt real. That night, on the balcony with Marcus, the city humming beneath us, he asked gently, "So, what does Stella Powell think?" I looked at him, then out into the dark horizon. I think, once you stop accepting less than you deserve, you start seeing just how much you're truly worth. Marcus said it best. Whatever decision you make, it should come from strength, not fear or wounded pride. And he was right. If Nexus ever worked with Bradford again, it would be because it served us, not because I needed to prove anything to anyone. I raised my glass to that. The weeks following the wedding unraveled decades of silence. Aunt Diana, once erased from Powell family lore, became an anchor. Her stories of being sidelined in a male-dominated business mirrored mine so precisely it was unsettling. For the first time, I saw my father not just as a gatekeeper of power, but as a product of a broken lineage, one I was finally breaking. The most unexpected shift came from my mother. Her voice on the phone was hesitant, but the words lingered. "You were right. We never celebrated you the way we did Adam. And I'm sorry." It wasn't redemption, but it cracked the wall. The bigger shift, though, wasn't external. It was in me. I stopped measuring success against Adam's accomplishments or my father's approval. I started acting like the CEO I had become. Not one trying to earn her place, but one owning it. Marcus noticed too. Our relationship deepened, not because I needed him, but because I could be fully myself beside him. With that clarity, I launched Visible, a mentorship program for women like me, builders overlooked by their own families. 20 women signed up in the first cohort. Their stories echoed mine, but their courage reminded me just how far I'd come. One night, looking over the city skyline, I said to Marcus, "It's wild. One choice at a wedding table changed everything." "That's how transformation works," he replied. "Small moves, big ripple." And the ripples kept coming. Adam texted, "Dad wants to host dinner, just the family, says it's important. Will you come?" I showed it to Marcus. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think I'll go," I said, "but I'm bringing you." I typed it out. "He's important to me. I want him there." Adam replied quickly, "Of course, Mom and Dad are looking forward to it." It wasn't a perfect ending. The Bradford deal hung unresolved. Adam's marriage showed new cracks, but for once, I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. And in that quiet certainty, I found something better than revenge. I found freedom. In the end, it was never just about a wedding seating chart. It was about years of being expected to stay quiet, to sit at the edges while others took the spotlight I'd earned. That night, I stopped accepting the bare minimum of respect from my brother, from his in-laws, from anyone. Walking away from a $30 million contract wasn't impulsive, it was necessary. Respect isn't negotiable, and I no longer make room at my table for people who can't see my worth. Adam later confessed, "She moved your seat on purpose, said your success made me look small, and I let her." It hurt. But hearing the truth finally shattered the illusion that silence was safer. Since then, things have changed. I lead with more confidence. I no longer chase approval. I mentor women like me, told to wait their turn, to be smaller. The wedding didn't break me. It freed me. And you, have you ever walked away from somewhere you weren't valued? Tell me in the comments. Like, subscribe, and remember, if they won't offer you a seat, bring your own chair.